Greetings War Thunderers, this is Longshot back for a quick look at patch 1.65. For various reasons, which I won't go into here, I haven't really played War Thunder very much in 2016, which is why I haven't been making as many videos. But with patch 1.65, the game is now officially out of beta. Yes, War Thunder is now released, whatever that means, so with that milestone I decided to fire up the game and see what's changed since I played it last. As for the patch itself, it's mostly dominated by the introduction of Japanese tanks. If tanks float your boat, and yes I know that boats are coming soon as well, then you may or may not be excited by these new tanks. For me though, tanks have never grabbed me, so I won't be commenting on them here. Let's look instead at what's changed on the aircraft side of things. Now I'm going to look at the new planes introduced in the patch later on, but first let's take a look at the patch notes, starting with these. The ability to destroy medium and light tanks with 30mm HE shells and higher has been fixed. Damage models for deflective aircraft services has been fixed. More damage model changes here. Fixed, fixed, and fixed. What does all this mean? Well, honestly, I don't know. Only time and experience will tell, but I should note that, from what I hear, a bug has been identified wherein many types of high explosive shells are disappearing rather than detonating when they hit the target. If that's true, well, it's very hard right now to make any judgments on the state of the patch until that issue has been resolved, so I'm going to reserve judgment in that respect. But there has been adjustments to a lot of planes here, and further down the list are several planes with revisions to their flight models. Again, only time will tell which planes are winners from all of this, and which have come out second best. If past patches are any guide, I seriously doubt that these notes are comprehensive. A few important things do stand out though. For Germany, the Bf-109K4 now has an option to carry the MG-151-20 motor cannon instead of the frustrating 30mm Mark 108. The Spitfire Mark 24 gets 150-octane fuel, which should further increase its seal clubbing value, provided of course that you can get its Huspaco cannon to work. And here's an interesting one. M2 50 cals, the earlier war models, or pre-war models, have lost their API and API-T rounds. Now this affects planes such as the Hawks, the P-40s, the Buffaloes, and the Wildcats, as you see here. Let's see what their belts look like now. As you can see, there's only armor piercing here. Universal, only armor piercing. There are no APIs, they're gone. So good luck setting fires with these belts. As there's very little impact from the kinetic damage of these bullets in War Thunder, these planes have lost a lot of their usefulness in the game. But once you get to the Corsairs, and I'll just bring up its modifications, you can see there's APIs starting to come back in. Universal has the original amount that we saw in the earlier belts prior to this patch. And any belt with 50 cals that has APIs is now actually going to become more effective. Why so? Well, because they have found a bug wherein the API was detonating on the surface of a fuel tank rather than inside the fuel tank. That's now been fixed, so I expect a lot more fires to be started by American 50 cal belts, provided you're flying a Corsair or later. Earlier planes in the American lineup will struggle, but these later ones should be flamethrowers, which they used to be in the past. But what hasn't changed in this patch? What is missing? Improvements to maps and mission designs. In short, there are none. In fact, there haven't been positive changes in this aspect of the game for a year or more. EC has been completely neglected. It's much the same now as it was 12 months ago, and still not permanently available for RB. That was the mode that I was waiting for in order to get into RB, but it just hasn't happened, and I see no evidence that it ever will. The much-promised World War mode doesn't seem to be any closer either, and the random maps in both Arcade and RB are still the same as ever. For Arcade, there's still no relief from the terrible setup of most ground strike maps, where the winning strategy is to fill your lineup with bombers, dive straight from spawn to the nearest ground target or base, die after hitting the spacebar, and then respawn to do it again. It's a style of play that requires no skill at all, and that forces extremely short battles on everyone else. This stupidity has been going on for far too long, and Gaijin just doesn't seem to care. You'd think that ensuring enjoyable gameplay would be important to Gaijin, as it's directly related to player retention, but no. Gaijin's only priority seems to be the continual addition of new planes and tanks, provoking a short-lived, ooh, shiny response from the player base, and further extending the grind needed to work your way through the tech tree. Now I could say a lot more about this, but I'm sure you get the gist of it, so I'll move on. I mentioned the shiny new planes, so let's take a look at them, though there's not that many in this patch due to the focus on Japanese tanks. As I'm looking at a USA plane here, let's see what's been introduced here. The B-34. Let's start with the bombers first. Firstly, I'll bring up its modifications so we can see what armament it has. It has a turret with 12.7mm, another turret with 7.62. It also has some machine guns firing forwards, which seem to be, again, a mix of 12.7 and 7.62mm guns there. Let's bring up the plane itself to see what it looks like. And yes, it's just your average early war bomber. Looks quite similar to many in the British line. It's probably quite tough. And most importantly though, where is its battle rating? Well, in realistic, it's a 2.7, which is quite early. In arcade, and I'll just switch back and bring that up. In arcade, it's a ridiculous 2.0, where there'll be very few planes with the hitting power or speed needed to be able to bring it down. And that seems to be a bit of a theme in this patch. The addition of more bombers at low battle ratings where they can just basically be impervious gunships, as well as further extending the meta where bombers just wipe out ground targets and end battles. The main other change for America in this patch has come with the Hellcats, and I'm talking about planes, obviously not tanks. Firstly, the F6F3 is now the F6F5. It's exactly the same plane. They just renamed it because they realised the F6F3 couldn't carry bombs, whereas the 5 could. There is no change to its flight model. However, we do have an F6F5N, and this is armed with 2 A&M2 20mm cannon, as well as 4 50 cals. However, it's right up at 5.0. If this shares the same flight model as the F6F5, which is already pretty poor at 3.0, then I think this plane will be a bit of a struggle. But yep, I'd have to try it to know for sure. So that's it for America. Let's move along and take a look at Great Britain. What do we have here? Another Sunderland flying gunship, and nicely low with its battle rating, same as the previous one. So if by some miracle your first Sunderland gunship gets shot down, you have a second one to come out and troll biplanes with now. Furthermore, we have Hamptons. Not just one, but there's 2 of them, down at 1.7. Yes, we did need a couple more tough bombers in the British early tier lineup as well. Why not? And that is it for Britain. Let's take a look at Russia. In this patch, I have to scroll down, Russia gets the 214T. Now this plane's a bit incongruous. It is a jet-engined torpedo bomber. Extremely fast apparently, and yet to drop torpedoes, traditionally you have to get low and slow, which kind of is a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? Anyway, torpedo bombers have had next to no role in War Thunder for a very long time, so I'm not really sure what the purpose of this plane is. Maybe it'll have some role when boats are introduced. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. Furthermore, Russia gets, in the premium side of things, a La-11, which is basically the next step in the evolution of the La-9 and was the final Lavochkin propeller fighter. If you like the La-9, then this plane will probably be pretty good for you, as it's there at 5.3 and it's a premium. And well, we also, speaking of premiums, we also get the Hampton down here as well, because why not? Move along to Japan. Okay, Japan is left out as far as early tier bombers are concerned, and if I was flying Japan, I'd be rather upset by that. They've concentrated on the irrelevant fighters, so let's have a look at them. Well, if you're an owner of a Bf-109E3, rejoice because now it's the E7, which means you get proper cannon, MGFFMs instead of MGFFs. We also have 2 new fighters in the game. Another premium, the Ki 100 Mark II. Not sure how that differs from the first Ki 100 on the normal line, on the free tree. It's exactly the same battle rating. We'll just have to wait and see. We also get another float plane. Right after the A6M2M comes the first Nikki float plane. That'll be fun. I look forward to try that out. Next, let's look at Germany. Last but not least. And I'll start with a Junker 88C6. This is the first fighter bomber variant of the Junkers. Let's just have a quick look at it. Okay, so here we are. We have 3 forward-firing cannon and 3 forward-firing machine guns. That is a lot of Dakar. If you can get something in front of you, you are very much likely to vaporize it. Now that all, of course, depends on the flight model of this plane. I don't expect it to be a great flight model. Historically, the plane was very underwhelming as a fighter, but nonetheless, that's what it's intended to be. However, it can obviously carry bombs, so it's a dual role here. It is a fighter bomber. In fact, one thing I just noticed about this plane is that it is classed as a bomber, even though it was built as a heavy fighter. Therefore, it will spawn at bomber altitude, and you know what that means. This plane spawns up with the bombers. It will be an ideal bomber hunter. Just try and go head on with everything that wants to accept it. You can't go wrong, unless something wants to turn fight with you, in which case you want to just dive away and get the dolphin kick going. I imagine you could actually shoot down a lot of planes with this thing. Scrolling further down, the Focke-Wulf 190 A5U12 has been separated now from the Focke-Wulf 190 A5U2. Difference being the U12 has the option to load all of those gun pods to give you 6 20mm cannon, but the U2 does not. But the real question here is, why is this A5U2 at a battle rating of 6.0? It's not as if its flight performance is particularly good, and it only has 2 20mm cannon. I mean, right down here we've got the A4, which probably has similar flight performance and has 4 20mm cannon, and it's at 4.3. 6.0, it just makes no sense. This really should drop quite a long way, and I expect hopefully Logic will come in at some point and it will be downgraded with its battle rating. But here's an interesting plane, the Henkel 100D1. Just bring it up there. This was the logical extension of the Henkel 112 design. It was considerably faster than the 112. It has a bit of the same gull wing sort of step in its wings there, so you can just see a bit of that original 112 influence also in the shape of the fuselage. It's quite a nice looking plane. In fact, it was considered to be quite a rival for the Bf 109 in terms of which one the Luftwaffe was going to go for and produce. They chose the 109 probably because of politics more than anything else, so this plane was only ever used to defend Henkel's factories, and not particularly successfully at that because they really just lacked numbers, I guess. But what is interesting with this plane is that the armament they've given to it. I'll just bring it up. 3 light machine guns. That's all it has. For a plane designed and built in just prior to the war and then into the early years of the war, that's very, very light armament. And in fact, there's tons of evidence to say that it had a motor cannon, starting with an FF, then an FFM, and then a 150-120. But Gaijin have chosen to ignore the tons of documents proving that that's what it had, and just put the light machine gun there, because there was a few of these planes that were sold to Russia, and they only had the machine gun. And the original primary historical documents about this plane have all been lost. So this is Gaijin being a bit ridiculously stubborn, I guess. With that light armament, such a fast plane is really not going to be very effective. It's really just another MC-202 in terms of great flight model, but huge inability to be able to shoot anything down with it. And it's a pity, because if it had that motor cannon, this would be one really exciting plane to fly. I'm going to unlock it and see what it's like anyway, because it's unique and new. I quite like it. And lastly, that brings me to a new premium, the TAR 154A1, which, as you can see, I have actually bought. Interestingly, this plane wasn't made by Gaijin, it was made by 2 members of the player community. One guy made the model, the other guy, Strafe Mike, who's a good friend, made the skin, and they benefit from any sales of the plane, which is why I went ahead and bought it. I love Strafe Mike's work. If you have a look for him on livewarthunder.com, you'll see a huge number of really high quality skins. I'm really amazed that Gaijin haven't given him a job, to be honest. But what does this plane have? Well, let's take a bit of a look, and let's take a look at its armament. It has 4 cannon. 2 of them are MG 150-120s, and 2 of them are 30mm Mark 108s. And you might think, well, that just puts it in a similar category to the Bf 109 K4. It's got mismatched cannon there. which means some are much slower rounds than others, and it'll be difficult to shoot things down with it. Well, in my very early experience with it, that's not really the case. Whatever gets in front of the hail of cannon shells that you can send out along the centre line there is going to vaporise. And that's even with the rumoured bug with many high explosive shells in the game at the moment. The plane itself has a bit of a mediocre climb rate. I've only tested it very briefly in arcade. As you can see, you can fly this with an attacker's spawn, which you should, gives you a 500 metre altitude head start. But after 2 weps, you're not above the interceptors you're likely to see. As you can see, there's BF-109s and Spitfires who are easily above me, even at this early stage. The plane is quite fast, its acceleration is good, its roll rate is really good. However, its rudder is quite weak, and that's very important in arcade. Its elevators are mediocre. I mean, this is a heavy fighter. It's not meant to go into low-speed turning battles. You do that against a single-engine fighter, you're going to die. But if you keep the speed up, fly it as fast as you possibly can, at all times, and be nice and gentle with your manoeuvres, you'll find that you can easily adjust to get guns on target, and when you do, nothing much survives it. It's really very nice. Anyway, that's it for this patch, for my very brief coverage of it. I'm not sure if I'm going to get back into the game or not. I mean, I'd like to fly this plane a bit to see how it is. I'll try the Henkel 100. Beyond that, we'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, take care everyone, good hunting, and maybe I'll see you in the skies.